Hello, this is David Bergantino, author of the Freddy Krueger's Tales of Terror series. You're listening to the 80s Slasher Librarian's audiobook presentation of Help Wanted. Keep it scary out there.
Seen in your dreams.
When I want you in my arms, when I want you, and all your charms. Whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, 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 dream. When I feel blue in the night and I need you to hold me tight. Whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream.
Just remember,
I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. The only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away.
Freddy Krueger's Tales of Terror, Help Wanted, by David Bergantino. Chapter 2. Laura returned home disappointed. She was no closer to landing a job than she had been before she'd left that morning. Of course, she had found Buck. That might even seem more important than a job, if she weren't too exhausted to think about it. Shelby, sitting on her bed, poring over her stamp collection, saw the look in her sister's eyes as soon as Laura walked in. No luck, huh? Shelby's expression was all sympathy and concern. Though younger, Shelby was the more level-headed of the two, and often assumed the role of the older sister. Laura was so comfortable with this arrangement she barely noticed it anymore. Flopping down on Shelby's bed, Laura sighed. Everywhere I go, they say they already hired their summer help. At this rate, I won't get a job until it's time for school to start again. Maybe you shouldn't pressure yourself? Shelby said casually. Maybe you should just enjoy the summer. Laura looked at her sister, shocked at such a suggestion. What do you mean? Not work? I've got to do my part around here. I'm old enough for a job, so I should help out. But Laura, Shelby said gently, Mom's been working steadily for a year now. We're pretty much out of the woods. I bet Mom would even like to see you take it easy. She's been saying she'll give you an allowance soon, hasn't she? I don't know, Laura said, her voice rising in an angry pitch. I can't just sponge off of Mom like that, even if she wanted me to. Okay, Shelby said, backing off quickly. It was just a suggestion. Laura sighed deeply, stretched back on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. Shelby turned back to her stamps, and an awkward silence enveloped the room. Against the ceiling, Laura saw a movie she had watched dozens of times before. It was entitled I Was on Top of the World Until the Bottom Fell Out. This familiar tale began with the full wall-cut cast. Dad, Mom, 9-year-old Laura, and 7-year-old Shelby. In it, the perfect family life was suddenly and irrevocably shattered when the villainous dad ran off with his buxom secretary. The mom, a housewife totally devoted to her children, was suddenly looking at a new life with no income, no job, and no marketable skills. Several difficult years followed. The mom eventually got a low-paying data entry position, but soon was able to send herself to college. Meanwhile, the girls learned to take care of themselves and each other, and they learned the importance of an education. Their mother taught them that above all they should never allow themselves to rely upon another person for their livelihood. The mom graduated from school and started a travel agency. The money she earned ultimately rivaled what the dad had made. Things became more comfortable. Shelby quit her paper route. As her mind movie flickered to its conclusion, Laura was left wondering, was a summer job really that important, now that Mom could easily support them? Truth was, Laura wasn't sure what she'd do with all her time if she wasn't working. She might gravitate toward the mall to spend the money she was no longer earning. Laura shook her head. She didn't want to lose the self-reliance she'd established. Besides, working with people was fun. At least it could be fun if a jealous boyfriend wasn't among your co-workers, she thought bitterly. Sitting up on the bed again, Laura put her hand on Shelby's shoulder. Shelby had been too young to really understand what had happened when their father left, though she clearly understood the situation now. She had not been affected by it as profoundly as Laura had been. Shelby looked up from her stamps and searched Laura's face. "I'm sorry I got upset with you," Laura said. "You know how I am." Shelby nodded and smiled. Laura's quirks were all too familiar to her. The awkward moment passed. Laura ran down the list of places where she had applied for jobs that day. Fair warning, the clothes store at the mall. "Big Game Burger, the place to go when you're on the hunt for a really big burger," gushed the commercials. And finally the hospital. When Laura told her sister about Buck, Shelby squealed with delight. "And you're going out with him tonight already?" She clapped her hands together. "You don't waste any time." Laura rocked backward on the bed, laughing. "Stop! It's not like we're going on a date. We're just going to a party so I can introduce him to some kids." Laura sat up and put her hands on Shelby's shoulders. "And what's more, you're going with us. We aren't even going to be alone." "Wait a minute," Shelby cried. "I'm not going anywhere." "Come on," Laura pleaded. "It'll be fun. Besides, if Buck turns out to be a jerk, I'll want you there for backup. Please, please." Laura began to tickle her sister. Shelby screeched and fell from her chair onto the floor in a fit of laughter. "Uncle!" Shelby could barely speak. "I'll go! I'll go!" Laura released her sister. "Good. I thought you'd see it my way. Come on. Let's have dinner ready before Mom gets home from work." The girls worked together to make a pasta primavera from fresh vegetables. They were both excellent cooks. Even their mother agreed that the girls' cooking skills far surpassed her own. They were just draining the pasta, about ready to eat, when the phone rang. "Hi, Laura?" came Buck's voice through the receiver. "Yes, this is Laura." A small thrill shot through her. "It's Buck, from the hospital?" He seemed to think she might have forgotten him already. Endearing. "I know that," she told him. "It's only been a few hours." "Yeah, I know, but..." He stopped, took a deep breath, and started again. "Are we still going to that party? Together, I mean?" "Unless you're canceling on me," Laura said. "No! I wouldn't do that. I just wanted to make sure we were still on." "I've got your name in my date book, in ink." Laura could practically hear Buck blush on the other end of the line. "Date? It's just an expression, Buck. I wouldn't be so presumptuous." She glanced over at Shelby, who was listening to Laura's end of the conversation with wonder. "It'll be you and me and Shelby. Can you come by around 9 tonight?" Laura gave him their address, said goodbye, and hung up. "I think he likes me," Laura told her sister. Shelby rolled her eyes as if to say, "Yeah, right." Laura ignored her. "And you know what else? If he does, I think that would be okay with me." This time, Shelby pretended to gag. After cleaning up the dishes, Shelby went to Laura's room to help her choose an outfit for the party. "This isn't a royal ball," sighed an exasperated Shelby. By now, Laura had tried on 4 outfits and rejected them all. "I know," Laura told her, "but I want to look nice for Buck. Is there anything wrong with that?" "If you're looking for a long-term relationship, make yourself look like you do first thing in the morning," Shelby suggested facetiously. "If he likes you like that, then you know you have a chance." "You're awful, Shelby." Shelby shrugged innocently. "I guess, but now you know why I don't go out. Too much trouble." "It can be worth it," Laura insisted. "Like the way Chester was worth it?" Shelby asked. She meant the comment to be funny, but Laura suddenly lost her sense of humor. "You really are awful," Laura said, turning away. Shelby was on her feet instantly. "I didn't mean it that way, Laura." They both understood that Laura was overreacting, but that still didn't excuse using the dreaded C word. "I know, Shell," she sighed. It's not your fault. He's a jerk. And not your fault either, Shelby added quickly. Then her eyes narrowed conspiratorially. Is that why you're so excited to take Buck to the party tonight? What do you mean? Laura asked, as if thoroughly stumped. Well, won't it be nice to show up looking your best and with another guy? Chester is bound to be there. That would be so in your face. Laura stared at her sister, who had delicious revenge written all over her face. Sometimes Shelby's nasty side surprised Laura. He would be jealous, wouldn't he? Laura pondered out loud. It'll serve him right, Shelby stated. You ain't just whistling Dixie, Laura concluded decisively, and both girls broke into a fit of giggles. Laura decided to wear comfortable jeans and a fuzzy sweater. Now, your turn, she told Shelby. Nah, Shelby replied disinterestedly. It doesn't matter what I wear anyway. Guys don't like bookworms. Gee, for a girl who knows so much, sometimes you don't know a thing. Laura took her sister by the arm and steered her to her closet. Here, pick anything. Shelby hemmed and hawed, but eventually she picked a denim skirt and pink blouse. Just as they were both putting on the finishing touches, gold bauble earrings, the doorbell rang. Laura clutched her sister by the shoulders as they both stared into the mirror. He's here! Wow, I can't believe how nervous I am. Releasing Shelby, Laura headed for the door. Shelby grabbed her arm and held her back. Geez, haven't you learned anything about playing hard to get? Then will you get the door for me? Laura asked. Tell him I'll be ready in a couple minutes. At least 5 minutes, I think, Shelby advised. Right, Laura agreed. Be down in 5 minutes. From downstairs, the doorbell rang once more. With a wink, Shelby ran down the stairs to answer it. Laura sat on her bed, fidgeting. This waiting game was silly, she thought. On the other hand, maybe she needed to learn to go slower. She could hear the front door open, then some muffled voices. Laura stood and almost raced down the stairs, but then set herself back down. Finally, after 4 torturous minutes, Laura could wait no longer. Laura found Buck sitting on the living room couch, and Shelby was nowhere in sight. Buck didn't hear Laura approach, so when she said hello, he almost jumped out of his seat. I didn't mean to scare you, Laura giggled. You didn't scare me, Buck said a little breathlessly. It was your beauty that shocked me. He extended the compliment rather boldly. A small wink acknowledged that even he realized the line was a bit hokey. Nevertheless, Laura blushed. Oh, please, was all she could say. She noticed his well-worn Levi's and dark purple Oxford shirt. Around his neck he wore a leather thong necklace strung through several clay beads. He looked handsome, and the nervousness from the earlier phone conversation was gone. Laura found herself staring. Shelby's entrance broke the spell. There you are! I was just going to come up and get you. Shelby looked at her watch. In a minute, she added in a stern tone. In one hand she held a vase with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. These she handed to Laura. Look what Buck brought for you. Laura took the flowers and buried her nose in them. They're beautiful, thank you, Buck. Before she knew what she was doing, Laura kissed Buck on the cheek. Now it was Buck's turn to blush. You're welcome. I'm glad you like 'em. A hint of his earlier nervousness returned, but then the kiss was probably unexpected. Before you get too excited, Shelby said. He brought some for me, too. I just couldn't carry both vases. Oh, well, Laura stammered, somewhat embarrassed. That was very nice of you, she told Buck. Let's get to the party. Sounds good to me, Buck said brightly. He led the way out to the car. On the front doorstep, when Buck was just out of earshot, Shelby whispered into Laura's ear. Your bouquet is much bigger than mine, by the way. Laura looked at her sister with a raised eyebrow. Sweet, isn't he? Buck drove a beat-up Datsun he introduced as Wilma. "It's practically a Stone Age car," he exclaimed. Laura told him a carefully cut version of the movie. Then Buck described his own situation. "My mother died when I was very young. I miss her, though I barely remember her. My father never remarried." "What brought you to Springwood?" Shelby asked. "My father lost his job. He's an accountant. He found a new position here." He paused. "How about you?" he asked Laura. "You hear about any jobs?" Laura shook her head. "Not since I talked to you after dinner." "Oh, right," Buck said, shaking his head. "Wish there was something I could do for you." Laura thanked him. "I wish there were something you could do too," she said, throwing up her hands in defeat. "Maybe I'll think of something." Buck's eyes seemed to lose focus as if he was in deep thought. Laura became worried that he wasn't paying enough attention to his driving. Buck?" Sorry," he said, snapping out of his trance. "Was just thinking. Some of those places you applied to have a pretty high turnover. Maybe something will open up." "I hope so, but I'm not holding my breath." "Just you wait and see," Buck told her, the wheels in his mind spinning faster and faster. Chapter 3. Once they turned onto Doug Street, his house was easy to find. It was the one where the loud music was blaring out of the windows, all of which were open on this mild summer evening. Doug's parents were out of town, and this was the kickoff to a week of freedom from parental restraints. Laura entered the house without knocking, Buck and Shelby immediately behind her. Doug was upon them immediately. "Laura, I'm glad you're here," he said, instantly wrapping his arms around her in a hug. "I can't believe I'm doing this." He was a wreck, hyper. The house was filled with other teens, hanging out, talking, drinking soda and beer, listening to music. The stress of doing something his parents would kill him for was practically killing him. "It'll be all right," Laura said, hugging him back. They kept their arms around each other as Laura introduced Buck. "I met Buck at the hospital today. He's new to Springwood." The two boys shook hands, but Buck seemed strangely bewildered. Laura tried to reassure him. "I told you about Doug. He's my best friend." Buck smiled then. Good to meet you." "You too," Doug replied, and then turned to Shelby. "What the heck are you doing here? Not that I'm not happy to have you," he added quickly. "Just, surprised." "Laura dragged me out. She thinks this is my debutante ball, or something." "Well, I'm glad you came out," Doug told her, sincerely pleased to see her. "There's stuff to eat and drink in the kitchen. Help yourself." Then he leaned into Laura and whispered, "I should tell you, Chester's here." Laura decided to play it cool. "Not a problem," she whispered back, glancing at Shelby, who gave her a thumbs-up sign. "Okay, then I've got to go look for Rain." A sour expression wrinkled his face. "She's on the warpath tonight." With that, he took off for the rear of the house. "Who's, Rain?" Buck asked as they made their way through the crowd toward the kitchen. "He doesn't, seem to like her much." Shelby and Laura exchanged an amused, knowing glance, then burst into laughter. "Rain's his girlfriend," Laura told him. "But you're right, he doesn't like her much. That's what's so funny." "Then why are they, dating?" "Because Rain asked him out on one date," Laura explained. Next thing he knew, she considered them boyfriend and girlfriend. At the time, Doug didn't see any reason not to just roll with it. "Basically," Shelby added, "he had nothing better to do." Buck just shook his head. "Weird." "Not really," Laura told him. "It worked for both of them for a while, but now Doug is too much of a chicken to tell her that it wasn't working for him anymore." "Well, I think," Buck started to say, but Laura cut him off with a look. Allison Heath, the assistant manager at Fair Warning, sat at the dining room table not far away. Even though they didn't get along, Laura thought this might be her opportunity to feel Allison out about the clerk position at the mall. "I'm sorry," she told Buck, her eyes focused on Allison. "Why don't you guys go get some drinks?" Shelby frowned, aware of what her sister was up to. "That's a lost cause, Laura, and you know it." "Maybe," Laura said defensively. "Or maybe not. I have to try." "Come on, Buck," Shelby said, taking him by the arm. "When Laura starts banging her head against the wall, it's not something you want to watch." "You sure?" he asked Laura. "Go ahead," Laura insisted. "Ignore Shelby, she's just being melodramatic. It'll only take me a minute." Reluctantly, Buck let Shelby lead him to the kitchen. Laura took a deep breath and entered the dining room. "Hi, Allison," Laura said, knowing that her chumminess sounded entirely artificial. "Laura," Allison said simply with an arrogant smile. Laura stammered. "I was wondering about that job at the mall." "Oh, I'm sorry, Laura," Allison purred, obviously not the least bit sorry. "The managers decided on somebody else today." Laura tried to hide her frustration. Allison knew why Laura was looking for a job and how desperate she must be kissing up to her. In a tone totally devoid of sympathy, Allison said, "There were so many applicants for just one position. You know how it is." "Yeah," Laura said dully and began to turn away. Then, in a weak effort to pretend the job wasn't the only reason she'd approached Allison, she turned back. "Well, anyway, who are you here with?" Allison's left eyebrow arched evilly. "Oh, you don't know. I'm surprised Doug didn't tell you. I came with Chester. Hope that doesn't bother you." "Not at all," Laura answered. Actually, she was far from bothered. If anyone deserved a creep like Chester, it was Allison. "In fact, I need to talk to Chester. Do you know where he is?" "He went that way," she said, gesturing languidly toward the back of the house. "But that was a while ago." Laura thanked Allison and went to look for Chester. She ran across Buck, who was talking to Rain Wilcox, Doug's erstwhile girlfriend. Laura had a brief desire to join their conversation, to clue Buck in on her, but no one who spent more than a few minutes with Rain could miss the fact that she was a very jealous girl trying to guard her territory. Laura continued searching for Chester. She went out the back door and found the backyard strangely empty. On a night as pleasant as this, she would expect more people to be outside. Maybe this was one of those mid-party lulls, she thought. Next to the garage stood a small, screened-in gazebo. Laura could see a single citronella candle burning in it, but could not tell if it was occupied or not. As she approached the gazebo, the sweet, oily smell of the candle reached her nose. Laura half expected to discover 2 or 3 kids hidden just beyond the candle's weak yellow glow, tangled in a drowsy discussion of life, the universe, and how it all changes once you get to college. But the gazebo was empty. Beyond the gazebo was another short stretch of yard, then a tall vine-covered fence. But right now, the back area, far beyond the reach of the citronella candle's feeble light, was an infinite black space. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, however, lighter spots began to stand out from the black field. The vine's flowers. They reflected what little light was available and began to look like a dim freeze frame of a fireworks show. Wanting to get closer to look at the flowers, Laura walked completely out of the flickering sphere of the gazebo's light. Taking one bloom in hand, careful not to pull it from the vine, Laura bent to take a whiff. Just as she did so, a hand grabbed her by the shoulder and spun her around. Panicked, Laura shrieked, but another large hand clamped hard over her mouth. A long, muscular arm quickly wrapped itself around Laura, and she found herself lifted and pressed against a strong chest. At the same time, the strong smell of alcohol and cigarettes threatened to overpower her. Thinking quickly, she kicked one foot backward and connected with a leg. "Ow!" grunted a deep, familiar voice. The arms let go and she dropped a few inches to the ground. "Chester, what the hell is your problem?" She swatted ineffectually at one broad shoulder. It was like smacking a concrete wall. Chester's nickname was the Chest. He was a gymaholic whose rigorous workout schedule had produced a body of Olympian proportions. But along with the well-sculpted body came the conceit, which had time only for those who admired him. Laura had been an admirer for a brief time, but not anymore. "Hey, stop that!" Chester whined. He rubbed the spot where Laura had hit him, though clearly he had felt no pain. With a dangerously smug look, he said, "I heard you were looking for me? Does that mean you're ready to kiss and make up?" He stepped forward and opened his arms. Laura stepped back quickly. "Not a chance," she said, her voice quivering. She was still recovering from his surprise attack. "Then why were you waiting back here for me? Aren't you ready to apologize? It's not too late, you know." Laura's hands clenched in rage. His audacity was almost beyond comprehension. "Me apologize to you? You must be as drunk as you smell." Chester crossed his arms as if offended. Not fully in control of herself, Laura jabbed a finger right into his chest. "You fired me, remember?" Chester's eyes lit up with anger. "I gave you a choice." Laura was almost speechless. 3 weeks ago, she had been a lifeguard at the pool where Chester was the head lifeguard. "Listen, Chester, you had no cause to be so jealous. Doug is a friend. I told you that. You need to get the muscle out of your ears so you can hear better." "I gave you a choice," Chester said again, as if to prove how dense his brain was. "Listen, I didn't decide on that budget cut. One lifeguard had to go. I let you decide. I thought it was pretty nice of me." "Yeah, some choice, me or Doug. What was I supposed to say? It was completely unfair. I could get you fired for what you did." "Why don't you try?" Chester replied. "Because I got better things to do than waste any more time on you, you moron!" She was breathing heavily with anger and a little fear. Chester had reared up to full height. "You had no right to accuse me of cheating on you. Doug and I were friends long before I met you, and we'll be friends long after your muscles squeeze the last of your tiny brains out of your head. So stay away from me, or I will go to the bureau." Instantly, Chester's eyes narrowed into slits. A large hand came down and grabbed her shoulder. "I don't like the way you're talking to me. You know that?" His grip was firm and painful. He leaned down and breathed alcohol and smoke into her face. To keep from gagging, she turned away. "Let go of me," she whimpered, but Chester didn't move. "Let her go," commanded a new voice. Chester and Laura both turned toward the silhouetted figure standing before the light of the candles. She recognized the voice. It was Buck. "Oh, and who's gonna make me?" Chester glowered, puffing up and making Buck look even more like a stick figure by comparison. Buck sighed with exaggerated boredom. "Couldn't you come up with something more original than that? Look, if we're gonna fight, shouldn't we just get to it?" Chester laughed. "I'll crush you." Every other supervillain from the dawn of comic books has used that line. Buck yawned. Then his body tensed, and in a low, commanding voice he said, "Make your move, buddy, or take off. Either way, make it snappy." At first, Chester was too shocked to be angry. Then, blinking as if clearing his mind, he nodded. "Right, sorry. I don't know what came over me." He started past Buck toward the house. Laura knew Chester was faking, but she didn't have time to warn Buck before Chester's powerful fist was streaking toward his face. With lightning reflexes, Buck sidestepped the blow and delivered one of his own to Chester's ribs with his elbow. The dodge, the rib pain, and his drunkenness threw Chester terribly off balance. Before he could recover, Buck stepped in and kicked Chester behind one knee. Chester's leg buckled, and he fell to the ground like he had been dropped from a roof. Buck stepped over him and reached a hand out to Laura. "I guess we'd better go, huh?" Laura stared dumbly at Buck's hand, then down at Chester, who was clutching his knee to his chest and groaning. Others were coming out from the house to see what was happening. Buck took Laura's hand and pulled her gently forward. "Come on, it's okay." In shock, Laura allowed herself to be led toward the house. The crowd parted for them. Then one girl cried out, "He's getting up!" Buck and Laura both turned just as a tremendous roar filled the air. Chester had catapulted himself at them, aiming for Buck. Pushing Laura out of the way, Buck met Chester, grabbing his outstretched arms. Rolling onto his back, Buck lifted his legs and pressed his feet against Chester's midsection. Continuing the roll, Buck pushed, launching Chester into the air. Chester landed on his back on the concrete patio. Buck, meanwhile, rolled deftly onto his feet, preparing for a counterattack. From the way Chester curled up into a ball on the patio, an attack was unlikely at best. "Hey!" Doug shouted from the back door. Jumping down the 3 steps, he kneeled beside Chester. "You could have killed him!" he shouted at Buck. "He was going to kill me!" Buck said, his breath coming in short gasps. "And he was hurting Laura." Doug looked up at Laura, who nodded in support of Buck's story. But even this did nothing to quell Doug's anger. "I don't care what happened. I don't like fighting at my house, under any circumstances." "But—" "Forget it," Doug interjected. "You guys will have to leave." Buck started to protest again, but Laura came to his side and tugged his arm. "He's right, Buck. Let's just go." Now it was Buck who allowed himself to be led away. Shelby was waiting for them just inside the house. The 3 of them headed toward the door together. As Buck unlocked his car, Doug's front screen door banged open. Out darted Allison, obviously in a huff. Chester stumbled out right after her, on a weaving path toward his car, an old Corvette Stingray. Doug came out then. He turned for a moment and called back to Rain. "Come on, we have to get him home. We'll be back in a couple minutes." Rain came out and stood on the top step, her arms crossed defiantly. "Rain!" Allison called sharply. "You have to come sit in the back with me." Chester was now leaning against the Stingray, whistling to himself as if he didn't have a care in the world. "I sure don't want to sit with Chester." Rain stamped once in frustration, then started down the steps. Doug headed toward the car, keys jangling in his hand. "Come on, Laura," Shelby said, urging her sister to get into Buck's car. Laura slid into the front passenger seat. Shelby had already taken her place in the back. Buck pulled away from the curb as the engine in Chester's Stingray turned over. As they passed by, Doug gave Laura a wry smile. Chester was slumped against his window, already fast asleep. Rain glared from the back seat with Allison. Laura looked back once they reached the end of the block. The Corvette's headlights angled out into the street behind them. Chester lived in the same general direction as Laura, so Doug would be following them for several blocks. While they rode down a long block near Elm Street, headlights appeared in the distance heading their way. They were swerving from side to side, the driver apparently out of control. "What's that?" asked Shelby, who was leaning forward from the back seat. "Oh, shit!" was Buck's only reply, because the lights were now heading straight toward them. "Hold on!" Cutting the wheel sharply to the right, Buck jumped the curb with a violent lurch. The girl screamed. There was a thump and Shelby cried out in pain. Buck grunted as his chest hit the steering wheel. The car came to a rolling stop on someone's lawn. Laura, secured by her shoulder belt, was unhurt. As she turned to check on Shelby, she caught a glimpse of the other car, a Cadillac, as it careened by. In the caddy was an old man, clutching his chest with one hand. The other hand was clawing at the steering wheel. Laura followed the caddy's taillights as the car headed toward another set of headlights. "Oh God! Doug!" Laura screamed. The Cadillac veered directly into the path of the Stingray. There was no escaping a collision this time. With a muffled crunch, the Cadillac broadsided the Corvette on the driver's side. Both cars seemed to jump into the air. Glass exploded. The next moments were silent, but for the buzz of streetlights. Buck groaned and rubbed his chest. Shelby moaned in the back seat. From the wreckage down the street, she heard no sound at all. Okay, Slashaholics, this has been chapters 2 and 3 of Freddy Krueger's Tales of Terror, Help Wanted. We got to meet some more interesting characters tonight. Apparently, in my head canon, Chester is from Philadelphia. Don't know where that voice came from, but it happened. Sorry about that, if Chester in your head wasn't supposed to be like a Philly guy. And, anyways, it's interesting to see how possessive Chester is, and that we have another kind of a mean girl character in his girlfriend. Rain, Doug's girlfriend, for some reason reminds me of someone that I used to know, someone that I may or may not have been in a relationship with. So it's going to be fun voicing that character. I think I'm going to let off a little steam from the past voicing that character in the future. But yeah, I'm interested to see where this book is going. This crash has me intrigued. I'm wondering if everybody's okay. What's going to happen after this? I am getting more and more leery of Buck, though. The way he handled Chester, even though he's way smaller and stuff, it sounds like maybe Buck is the guy possessed by Freddy in this story. If there is someone possessed in this story, I don't know yet. But if I had to pick right now, I'd say Buck. The whole wheels spinning in his head, and the way he was able to, fight this guy that's way bigger than him and pretty much destroy him. The smart-ass comments he made to Chester. To me, it just sounds like he may be under the influence of Freddy, but we won't know for a while, and the story is still new here. We've met some more characters, and all we can do now is keep reading and see where the story goes from here. I'll be back very soon with more of Freddy Krueger's Tales of Terror, Help Wanted, by David Bergantino. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying thanks for listening. Pleasant dreams! Be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time. Also, Slashaholics, be sure to check out the merch store. We've got all kinds of great designs there now, some new ones that we just added recently. The newer designs have some lower prices than the older designs. I'll be updating all the prices soon. We also have a huge variety of PPE masks with the designs on the masks, and I got those at the cheapest possible price. And yeah, check it out. The link to the merch store will be in the description below. And also, please check out Slash Tracks. It's a new project, a new show I have on the channel. It's slowly picking up more viewership and stuff, but I think you guys would really enjoy it. Me and my co-host on the show, Alex, each week, or every 2 weeks, we watch a really bad horror movie, and we do kind of a Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing with it, where we riff on it, and we record the riff commentary track for the movie. Sometimes we can include the movie in the upload with our riff track playing on it, and sometimes we'll let you know when to start your copy of the movie, so you can be queued up with our riff track commentary on it. And usually you can check the description of the episodes that don't have the movie included in the episode, and I'll supply a link to Google Drive with the version of the episode with the movie. Sometimes I just can't put those on YouTube is all, because of copyright. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, great riffing. It's hilarious, I promise. You'll have a great time. You'll get a lot of laughs out of it. We even have wraparound segments at the beginning and end of it, where this evil villain, Master Evil, has held me and Alex captive, and he's the one forcing us to watch the bad movies. And those wraparounds are a lot of fun to make, and I think you guys would really enjoy them. Check out the intro to Slash Tracks. This is the opening animation and theme song for the show. And yeah, after you're done watching this, check out my playlist section. We've done 10 episodes of Slash Tracks. Lots of bad horror movies that we've poked a lot of fun at. Starting with episode 6 is where Master Evil, the villain, was introduced. And before that, we did stuff like Ghoulies, Troll 2, Ghostbusters 2016, and then Carnosaur 1 and 2, Redneck Zombies, Puppet Master vs. Demonic Toys, Ernest Scared Stupid, and Jacko. Plenty of stuff there to keep you laughing, and it's a lot of fun. Check it out, and we'll catch you later.
When Master Evil comes to play, and Mother says that it's okay, stole away and made to watch these movies, to stay